So now that we have kind of modified our data so that it can read the dates the way you want them to be, we can change that now by looking at other basic functions in pandas that you will be using in future in terms of cleaning the data, because as I said in our previous videos, cleaning the data is one of the most involving tasks in data science, and actually that is where you spend most of your time. The others are simple. You're going to pick functions, run them, and you get your results. So it's very, very important to learn the techniques of cleaning the data. And you clean the data by, first of all, looking for errors and any inconsistencies in your data. And then before you can start applying the algorithms, such as if you are interested into AI and all those stuff. So the first thing I want us to do is to detect any missing values in this our data frame. Of course, we know that Ethiopia doesn't have got the independence year. It doesn't have the colonizer. We know Namibia doesn't have any successful coup. Liberia doesn't have got any kind of colonizer. So those are the things we know. But remember, this is a very small subset of data. When you start dealing in the realm of million data points, it's gonna get super messy very, very fast. So to check for or detect for any missing data, simply use your column or your data frame name, which is df, and use the function pandas has got a function sn, which basically means it's not null, and then opening and closing brackets. So once you run this, it will basically return a series. It will go through each of your data points and ask itself whether there's a value or not. If there's a value, then it will return false. But if there's no value in it, it will return true. So let's check for data point 2 or row 2 column independence. So if we go here and check, we realize that row 2 column independence is Ethiopia's date of independence, which is not available. The same goes to here, colonizer, column 2, the same case in this case. But I want us to be curious. Look at Namibia. So Namibia doesn't have any value, but if you look at it, that is successful row 3. So row 3 successful, it has returned value. So that is why when you are doing data preparation, and you kind of now see the importance of cleaning the data and preparation, because if you didn't clean your data, then you'll confidently say that there's a value in Namibia, but realize that there's no value here. So how do you get rid of that? You get through the technique we learned this side here. So first of all, you make sure that you call this function when you are importing your data, so that whenever it sees this, it reads this at no value. So let me just copy this, and I'm gonna paste it at the point where I'm importing this data, so that it reads that as a no value. So once I run it, then come back, run this, you can see now it has updated here to be no value, and therefore when I run this cell here, now you can see it's telling me true, which means there's no value in that point where Namibia was initially indicated as underscore. So that is to do with the detecting any missing values. So you can also drop any missing or any column, or not column but rows, without any data. So what that means is it will look at each of these data points. Pandas will look at each of these data points, and if it encounters any of the rows that has got a missing value, then it drops the whole of it. So like in this case, it's gonna drop Ethiopia, it's gonna drop South Sudan, it's gonna drop Liberia. And this can be useful if you're dealing with maybe 47 million data points. But when you're dealing with small data sets, you might end up losing like half of your data. So you don't want to use this, but nevertheless, I'm going to show you how it works. So basically, we just do df.drop no value, opening and closing bracket. So if you do this, you realize that our data points has reduced from 10 to 9. Why? Because it drops Ethiopia. Ethiopia didn't have a value here, so it drops it. It also dropped Namibia, it dropped South Sudan, if I'm not wrong, and it also dropped Liberia. You can see there's no Liberia, so that is what's happening. So if you use this function, chances are that you're going to lose half of your data set, and that's why sometimes you need to know other ways of dealing with missing data, and that will form the next part of our tutorial. Also, sometimes you will just want to know the unique values for each column. So in this case, I want to know the unique values for the colonizers. So like we know very well that I don't want us to drop this, so let me just rerun the previous code, this one here, so that I have got the full set. So if I do df to mean the data frame and then colonizer, so make sure before you start doing this, because you dropped some columns, please go back and rerun the initial point where you are importing your data so that you have all the values. So I'm gonna select the column for colonizer and return unique values. So pandas has got a function called unique that returns unique values in a data frame. So it's called unique, number of unique values, and simply return. So you can see it's telling me that the number of unique values is 5. So let's confirm that. Let me just come back to our initial data frame. So let's look at all the unique values under colonizer. So Britain, so that's not unique, so that's one. That's not available. This is the second one, not available. Third, same. Fourth, fifth, same. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can see it has returned number of unique values as 5. It doesn't return the NA. Why? Because there's no value there to mean unique. So that is why it's very, very important to clean your data before you start working on it or exposing it into those complicated algorithms. Now, you realize that if you have worked with Excel, you can also arrange your data in terms of ascending and descending points. So to do that, pandas has got a unique function for doing that called sort, and you can do that by index or values. So I want us to do by values, basically to sort based on the values in each of the columns. So for this case, I'm going to use the coup because this is where we have got numerical values. So to do that, just call the name of the data frame df.sort. The name of the function is sort values, and then by equal to. So here is where you specify how you want to sort it. So I'm gonna use coup. So before that, I have to add those square brackets. Then cool. I told you should always copy it, but I'm not following my instruction. My bad. So now you can see initially is now sorted them, and if you do this, you realize that the index hasn't changed. It has changed the index. Basically it is now just reshuffling the index, but you can always change that by doing reset index to ensure that you get the right values on the index is correctly labeled. So that is something you want to do that, and it has automatically arrange them from the smallest to largest, with Nigeria being the largest and the smallest being Namibia. So you can equally reverse that by simply specifying another extra function called here ascending, and then set it to false. If you do this, it will automatically arrange them according to the largest to the smallest. So you can guess if I do true, it's gonna do the exact opposite of that. Okay, so that is one. I think we can reset our index. Let me just look at the syntax. I don't know it on top of my head, that's why I'm googling. And by the way, always feel free to Google. I can do reset index here by just copying this so that our index are correctly labeled. So to do that, I'll just copy it at the end of this dot reset index and run it. And if I do that, it has reset it to the initial. So please look at comment on how you can do it on the comment section, and I'll see who tried it. Please, can you try and reset the index so that it arranges them, and make sure that this one is arranged from 0 to 11, and show me your syntax at the comment section. So the last thing that I want to show you, although you will rarely use this in Python, is the transpose function in your data analysis. So what transpose function does is it basically converts the columns to rows and the rows to columns. I know it's a very dummy thing to do, but in some cases you might find yourself applying. Plus, any knowledge is not useless. So in this case, if we do transpose of this data frame, for those who did maths, transpose is basically you are changing the columns and the rows, or interchanging them, and you can always do that. You remember that from your matrices, but here it's going to do exactly that. So we'll end up with only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to end up with five rows and then around 11 columns. So you can see it's something silly to do, because if you had got a million data points and 3 columns, then it means we're going to have got 3 rows and 1 million columns, which doesn't make sense. But let's do it. So you just do df don't transpose, and if you do that, this is what you're going to have. So you can you realize that you have got now 3 columns, 5 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have got more than 10 or 11 columns. So this is what the transpose does. So those are basic functions in pandas that you can take advantage of. If you want to learn more functions, the best way is also to check pandas series documentation, and then you check on this new one. There's lots of arguments and functions that you can infer here to do pandas. So you can read this, and it has got examples. For example, to CSV, to CSV, you realize that we used that a lot. Here's an example how they're doing it, and they're setting index to false. So this is just an example. So once again, please subscribe, like the video, and share with friends. See you in the next tutorial.